Hey, what is up, guys? I'm Tony, and welcome to my channel, Activism on the Fly, my portal to becoming a better ally, advocate, and activist. If it's your first time tuning into this channel, thanks so much for stopping by, and for all of you subscribers, I appreciate the support immensely. Thanks so much for coming back. Today we're going to talk about something that we've all heard about before, but there's a bit of confusion circulating around as to what this really means. So without further ado, let's get into it. Today we're talking about privilege. Now, you've probably been hearing a ton about privilege online. We've been hearing about white privilege in the times of the Black Lives Matter movement. Here's a secret that not everyone knows. White privilege isn't the only privilege. Black people can have privilege too, and brown people can have privilege too, and rich people and poor people can all have privilege. The truth is that almost every single person has some type of privilege, and almost no one has every type of privilege. With that being said, let me go ahead and explain what I mean. In talking about what privilege is, I think it's really important to talk about what privilege is not. Privilege is not having your life handed to you on a silver platter. Privilege is not having everything you want. Privilege is not being the 1% that is incredibly wealthy. Privilege does not exclude you from struggling. Privilege does not mean that your life is perfect. What privilege is about is having empathy. Now, empathy is just basically having imagination, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes, being able to kind of take off your blinders and see the world from somebody else's perspective. That's all that privilege is. Privilege is less about what you do have and more about what you don't have. There are certain experiences that you have the privilege of not having. I know this sounds a little wonky, a little maybe like woo-woo and complicated, but I'm gonna just lay it out a little bit with some examples of other types of privilege. There are like a million different ways that somebody can be privileged or have privilege. Did you know that Black people can have privilege? A Black upper middle class family has socioeconomic privilege that a poor white family does not have. So that upper middle class Black family, they might never have to worry about having enough food on the table. They might have stable jobs that they don't worry all the time about losing. And if they did lose a job, they probably would feel the privilege of having a good enough resume, educational background, work experience that they would feel pretty confident that they could find another job should they lose theirs. The privilege of financial stability, of your socioeconomic status, it's not like you don't deserve to have this wealth that you have, and it's not that you don't deserve to have the standard of living that you have. So just like erase the whole notion of like deserving. That's not part of privilege. All it means is that you have the privilege of not worrying that you won't be able to feed your kids tomorrow. And you have the privilege of not having to experience sleeping in a shelter. For that poor white family, they're disadvantaged financially, but they still have white privilege because they have the privilege of not understanding the experience of being Black in America. They have the privilege of statistics on their side that say that they're less likely than their Black counterparts to be arrested, serve jail time, be brutalized by police. So those are just two examples of privilege that can be intertwined. You might think my life isn't that great and I don't have any privilege. It's almost impossible that you don't enjoy any form of privilege, whoever you are and wherever you are. But as you can see, it's complicated, and it doesn't mean where you're advantaged in one area, you're not disadvantaged in another area. So socioeconomic status is one. Being a man in America affords you some privilege that we don't have being a woman. I was in a hotel shuttle one day on my way to the airport, and I was just talking to the other crew members, a pilot, another flight attendant, about what we did on our layover. And I mentioned that I had gone for a run, and this pilot chimes in and he said, oh, have you ever gone to this area? Oh, I haven't been there. He starts telling me about this running trail. It's really great, close to the hotel. There's trees, there's trails, and it's super secluded. There's no one out there, and it's just really beautiful. And it struck me, here we are, we're coworkers, and we're both runners, but we have such a different experience. I looked at him and I said, wow, it must be really awesome to be a man and not be worried about going to a secluded spot to go running all by yourself. Don't even get at me for being like a victim, because I'm a feminist and I will do anything the hell I want to do. But that's just a dangerous thing for women to do. I wouldn't just go running in a secluded place by myself because I would fear for my safety. He turned to me kind of wide-eyed. I never thought of that. In a nutshell, that is the point of privilege. I never thought of that. I didn't realize that that was your experience. That's what privilege is. That's it. Now, before you go thinking that I'm like doing the man-hating thing, whatever that might be, women have certain privileges that men don't have. When a young boy is upset and he cries, he's told that he's a sissy. And boys internalize this whole, you have to be a man and you have to be tough and you have to man up until they're adults. So as a woman, I have the privilege of not feeling like I'm a weak little sissy or less than if I become emotional and like cry. I don't know, like my human body was designed to do from time to time. There is straight privilege, obviously, right? Cisgender straight people, that's the default in America. So if you're straight, are you bad because you're straight? No. Is it something you should feel guilty about because you only are attracted to the opposite sex? No, that's not what it's about. But you should be able to acknowledge that as a straight person, you don't have the experience of having to come out of the closet and wonder if your family will accept you or reject you. You don't have the experience of having strangers you have never met voting on your rights to marry the person you love, or to be protected at your place of employment from being discriminated against, harassed, or fired. As a straight person, you don't know what it's like. Now, that doesn't make you a bad person that you don't know what it's like. It just is what it is. You're straight. You don't get it. But when people who are LGBT are telling you about their experiences, they're not lying. They're telling the truth. So having empathy allows us to see things from their perspective when they tell us, hey, like things are kind of crappy in this respect because I'm worried that I'm going to get harassed or fired from my job and have no legal recourse. Now, I'm a B, I'm part of the LGBT community, but even within the LGBTQIA plus community, very encompassing, there is sort of a hierarchy of privilege. The gay rights movement is very mainstream now, so much so that younger generations of kids, they don't see really what the big deal is because they have friends that are gay. They always have, like, their parents have gay friends that are married. Like, most people are pretty used to this idea, right? That gay people are people among us and deserve the same rights as everyone else, and this is just more and more common as new generations come up. But trans issues are not there yet. Historically, they were set apart and really marginalized even within the LGBT community. And for a lot of heterosexual, cisgender Americans, they can wrap their heads around being gay, but trans issues they don't understand. They maybe haven't taken the time to learn or get educated on trans issues. And so, you know, you still hear a lot of transphobic jokes. You still hear people like misgendering someone or using terms like tranny or transvestite to talk about somebody who's transgender. There's just a lot of ignorance around these issues. So for people in the LGBT community, there's privilege in being just gay or just bi. Transgender people are among the most marginalized people in our country. And of course, the marginalization is only made worse when you add things like a black trans person, a black trans woman, right? Stacking those labels, which come with more difficulty, one on top of another. There's a different kind of privilege in the LGBT community. I recently wrote a post on my travel blog, awheelinthesky.com, about traveling while LGBT. And I looked into the laws criminalizing LGBT people in a lot of different countries. And in many countries, men having sex with men is an illegal act punishable on varying levels depending on where you are in the world. But gay women or intimate acts between two women are not mentioned in the same places. So in those countries that I might travel to, I would have the privilege of being an LGBT woman that, maybe my gay boy friend wouldn't have coming on the same trip with me. Two different people doing the same exact thing, a regular thing, right? We're going on vacation, and for him, the experience is completely different than for me. It's riskier, it's more dangerous. He might face harassment from the public. I mean, he might just decide that he shouldn't go and miss out on that trip completely, right? And that's a perfect example of how privilege works. If you have health insurance and you have never had the experience of deciding between filling a prescription and putting dinner on the table for your family, that's privilege. If you don't think twice about going to the doctor when you're sick, if you don't think twice about going to the doctor when you're injured, if the first thought on your mind when a medical emergency arises is not money, then that is privilege. For a lot of people, healthcare is an impossible goal. For a lot of people, they have to choose between getting their medication or feeding their families. People have to choose between having a life-saving procedure and keeping their house. Education is an area where a lot of people have privilege and some people have less privilege or none. Being college educated comes with certain privilege. But I paid for it with my own money. Listen, I get it. I just finished paying off my last student loan and I graduated in 2008. You paid for yourself. And that's friggin' awesome, by the way. I'm very proud of you. But did you have a guidance counselor that encouraged you to apply to colleges? Did you have a parent that signed you up for an SAT prep course or even one that just drove you to the SAT test? Did you have parents that gave you money to fill out college applications and helped you mail them in and meet all the deadlines? Did you have a mentor in school, a teacher that you trusted that gave you advice when you were applying to colleges or when you thought of applying? Did you have a parent or a guardian or someone in your life that took you on tours of different college campuses? If you answered yes to any of these things, and most people, if they went to college in America, could answer yes to one of those, that's privilege because not every child has that. You're privileged because you didn't have the experience of having to do it all on your own. You're privileged because of the experience of that being within your reach. Just think about it, like when you were in school, the kids that got bad grades and you thought that they were just like goofing around and not paying attention. What if they hadn't had enough sleep because when they went home, they weren't a kid that just did their homework and then played and went to sleep, right? What if they were helping to care for their younger siblings? What if they had to do all the housework because their parents were working multiple jobs? What if they had an active alcoholic or drug addicted or mentally ill or abusive parent at home? Can you see how things might have been a little more difficult for them? Having the privilege of not experiencing those things is privilege. I don't feel like acknowledging my privilege takes anything away from the accomplishment of A, completing college, getting my degree, and B, paying off all of my loans. All I'm trying to do is say that now that you, with your adult eyes, can look back and see that the child who did terribly in school, who failed, who was in detention, or, the smelly kid in your class, or the child that got in fights, if you can look back on that with your adult brain and have some empathy and think, that child probably was going through some tough stuff at home, all I'm saying is to speed up the process a little bit, to look around now at other adults or other people in the world and realize that some of the things that you take for granted in your day-to-day life, other people don't have access to. And it just makes things a bit more difficult. It's not taking away any personal culpability or responsibility for everyone's own actions. I'm simply suggesting that we don't all start off at the same starting point. So to assume that we could all arrive at the same destination by exerting an equal amount of effort, that's just fantasy. That doesn't make any sense. Someone's physical appearance could be a point of privilege. There's something called the halo effect. When you see a good trait in somebody, you attribute other good traits to their character. This works a lot with physical appearance. People who are perceived to be attractive are more likely to be perceived as being smarter, funnier, kinder. And people who are perceived to be less attractive are also perceived to have any negative character attributes stick to them more. Having an appearance that's culturally acceptable in our society, it has perks. So I've got a boatload of privilege because I'm a white, educated, well-spoken woman. I think that I would fit the culturally acceptable appearance standards sufficiently, that I have privilege for that as well. That doesn't mean that my life is easy or that I've never struggled. My family didn't have a lot of money when I grew up. I grew up in a one-parent household, right? I've had financial troubles in the past, and I've had problems with drinking too much in the past. And so I've had problems, plenty of them. But there are a whole bunch of other experiences that I just have the privilege of not having to experience. So white privilege and white male privilege are not the only forms of privilege. People of color in America just have a completely different reality than white people in America do. The American way of life is wrought with so many inequities, and they are baked into the system. I just did a complete video on this. It's on education reform, and I recommend watching that. In that video, I go into kind of some of the reasons behind why we don't have more equity in housing, in economic opportunity, in education, how there are so many disparities in healthcare. Black people have been telling us all along, this isn't over, we're still not equal, society is not equitable or just for everyone. And a lot of white people in America are starting to listen, and we're starting to use our empathy more than we have in a long time. And we're trying to put ourselves in other people's shoes. And that's why we're in this moment right now. This is why we're hearing so much about white privilege. When someone asks you to examine your own privilege, they're not telling you that you're undeserving of the life you have, that you should have less. Nobody is telling you that everything wrong in our society is your fault. It is not a proclamation that your life is perfect. Acknowledging privilege, as I said before, is simply about looking at the world through a wider lens. It's about understanding somebody else's experience that's different than yours. So if you just take this, take it to go, take it home, sit with it, see how you feel. Not only do I hope that you love your life, I hope that you come to a place of being able to look at other people and see things from their perspective. I hope you come to a place of being able to believe people when they tell you that their experience is different than yours. I hope that you come to a place of wanting that same awesome life for other people. Hopefully that was a really positive note to end on. I feel like it is. That's all I've got for today. I hope you enjoyed this video on privilege, and I hope that I explained things in a different way than you've heard before. I don't know, leave me some comments. Send me all your points of privilege in the comments. Let me know, what did I miss? If you guys have ideas for other video topics, leave them in the comments below as well. If you did like this video, and I hope you did because I sat in a very hot car filming it, then please go ahead and click that thumbs up. If you'd like to follow along on this journey for more activism related content, then please go ahead and click subscribe. I would love to have you.